First of all, that's just ridiculous, okay? You can either be a warrior or a wizard, not both. Something like that would just be unbeatable.
So what's being described here in D&D terms is what we call a Gish, or a combination of a martial class and spellcaster. Now, there are some more full castery Gishes, like, for instance, the College of Valor or the College of Swords Bard, or casters such as, Rangers and Paladins can also be called Gishes, single class Gishes. But you're talking specifically a warrior wizard, which would, in my opinion, would either be an eldritch knight or a blade singer. And enough, there is an actual arcane intelligence casting there are Gish in this campaign guide that Yahweh seems to have put together. So, join me while we talk about the one Gish I could find in the Bible campaign, and that being Joshua. So, hello and welcome to Dungeons and Divinity, where we take a look at God's Word through the lens of the Devil's Game. Today we are talking about the one Gish I could find in the Bible, Joshua. Now, as stated before, there are several ways to make a Gish or a martial caster class. Popular choices are Paladins, Rangers, the College of Valor Bard if you want to go full caster, or the College of Swords, also Bard if you want to go full caster, or if you want to go more on the fightery end and go third caster, there's the Arcane Trickster rogue, which isn't quite martial, but I'll slip it in. The Hexblade Warlock, Pact of the Blade, it also makes a very good Gish. Or the Eldritch Knight is the Eldritch Knight is, is a subclass fighter, but that is not what we're talking about, because though the Eldritch Knight does take spells from the wizard spell list and thus would be a warrior wizard, it doesn't quite get the level of spells that Joshua was shown to have cast. So instead, and a little spoiler alert, I'm gonna have to break my one rule to make this analysis come together. But without further ado, here we talk about the Blade Singer, Joshua. So the first spell seen in this campaign, or in this campaign arc, is the fan favorite, what practically every prophet or caster in Yahweh's campaign seems to pick up, is Control Water. Now, originally I had thought that this would have to be cast out of the Ark of the Covenant, partially because of how it's described in the campaign book, and mostly because I thought that was like a cleric and druid only spell. However, it is in fact on the wizard spell list, so we'll chalk it up to that. Though we can say that the presence of the arc increase the duration of the spell or increase the spell's potency. I will probably be building together what, a homebrew magic artifact of what I think might mechanically, match the designer's intent. But that's going to take some doing. Waters of the river are parted. They walk across on dry land, and they build up a pile of rocks, and it stays parted until everyone is across, and they build up the pile of rocks in the middle, and then once the arc leaves the area of effect, that's when the spell actually ends. So that's partially why I see the arc as integral in this spell. If it isn't actually cast from the arc itself, it definitely increased the duration of the control water spell, though I think which only lasts like 10 minutes, maybe a minute. It could last as long as an hour. I'll have to double check. If I do make a correction, it will be in the description below. But now we come to so they move in, to Palestine, and Joshua casts another fourth level spell, Contact Other Plane, to meet with a guardian, an angel of the Lord, to get some battle strategies. This becomes somewhat a theme in this campaign, where Joshua will use divination magic to contact either Yahweh himself or one of his representatives to get battle strategies and basically get hints from the DM what might work really, really well. So now Contact Other Plane does allow you to ask up to 5 questions, assuming you passed a DC 15 wisdom save against going insane for a short duration, thank goodness. And it allows you to ask 5 questions, which have to be answered truthfully by the DM, but they can be answered cryptically in short phrases. Now, he only asks 2. It's like, are you with us, or with our enemies? And it's, I'm an angel of the Lord. And so the way the encounter is written, it could have very much been an NPC encounter thrust upon the player. But I like to add, you could easily say that Joshua cast a spell and, was trying to make sure he didn't conjure up a demon or something. So now we come to the walls of Jericho, the most famous feat. And so how do these walls of Jericho fall? Well, if you were to put this, use this as a module, it would make a very good challenge for your players. However, whether through, divination and getting hints from the GM, or the GM just showing favoritism because Yahweh is that much of a douche, or a straight up just brilliant play by Joshua's players, he uses an interesting combination of spells to bring the walls down. First is Move Earth. It is a 4th level spell where you can essentially move the earth. It doesn't affect structures, but you can, as long as you're within range and concentrate on it, it lasts up to an hour, and every turn you can move, like up to like 40 square feet of earth. I will post the link to all the spells mentioned in this video in the description below, as usual. And so, of course, he is moving the earth underneath the walls to make essentially a trench, or a sort of trench around the city to undermine the foundations of the city walls. But move earth does not affect structures. So, and while he is a 20th level wizard at this point, because he is one of the 2 characters to survive the Wilderness Detour campaign, he does not, 4th level spells are not infinite. You only get, you only get 4 4th level spells a day. Now, as a wizard with arcane recovery, he can recover up to 10 levels worth of so he can get 2 4th level spell slots back for a short rest. But that does not make for, casting all day while marching around a city. However, there is a cantrip that can be used to also dig trenches, and I would rule that after having move earth cast on it, the area of ground would be loose enough for mold earth to work. Mold earth makes a 5-foot trench. You can move 5 feet of earth of loose earth, hence why mold earth would have to be cast first. And as a cantrip, it can be cast over and over and over again, essentially at will. And once again, it doesn't do damage. It doesn't affect structures. Well, okay, it doesn't do damage as it is cast. However, a fun thing you can do is you can dig a pit and then, cover the pit. Dig a pit with the mold earth, and then cover the pit. The person, whoever happens to fall in the pit still takes the fall damage. A little tip for your players there. So, we've breached, we've undermined the walls, but they still stand strong. So, what is a wizard, what is a fighting wizard to do? Well, after 6 days of making sure that the walls have no solid foundation beneath them, he brings up his next, and of course he's having these people play and sing praises to cover up the noise of, the vocal and somatic components of his undermining, magically speaking, because he is constantly casting, mold earth and, of course, casting move earth, about 4 maybe 6, maybe as much as 6 times, depending on whether or not he can actually get a long rest or a short rest in. But that doesn't bring the walls down, because once again, it doesn't affect structures. So, what are we to do? Well, on the 7th day, he has them walk around the city 6 times silently. Meanwhile, he is placing glyphs of warding. Because at 20th level, wizards get something called Signature Spell, where they can choose 2 of their 3rd level spells that they can essentially cast like a cantrip. And a couple of levels before that, wizards also get spell mastery, where they can pick 2 either first or second level spells. So you can either get 2 first level spells, 2 second level spells, or a first and second level spell to, once again, essentially cast like a cantrip. Now, so this is where we bring down the walls with these glyphs of warding and a very special second level spell called Shatter, where it does affect, structures and other inanimate objects. In fact, inanimate objects automatically save the fail to take a ridiculous amount of thunder damage and break, because that's the name of the spell. So he is loading these glyphs of warding with Shatter as the spell put in there. And the reason he keeps the other Israelites silent is because he has set the trigger to be, when ram's horns are blown and the people shout, essentially. Because you can load your, you can choose the glyph of warding to trigger at any set trigger, whether it's, if this object is opened, or if this area is approached by X amount of thing, or you set the trigger that triggers the glyph of warding. So, the people finish their, 7 circuits around Jericho, and they shout, and the glyphs of warding trigger, and boom! All at once, tons of thunder damage to the structure, brings the walls down on its non-existent foundations, except, of course, for the section of wall that has a red cord hanging from it, because that's where, Rahab lives, who, helped the spies. But, so we move on to where the Israelites attack the town of Ai. Now, they thought Ai was going to be a rather easy encounter because that's, just how it looked. It's a much smaller city than Jericho, and they figured they have the people to just decimate them without even, giving all of their forces in. But what the rest of the party, doesn't know is a, first level, we're just going to say rogue again, because that's the stereotypically rogue thing to do. But someone, took some things from Jericho, and they were just supposed to destroy everything that didn't belong to Rahab. But, as I said in my Yahweh is a terrible DM video, a murder hobo is gonna murder hobo, so why don't you let them take the stuff? That's kind of a dick move. So, because, Achan takes some loot, the GM fudges all the rolls, and they get their asses handed to them. They start the, NPCs, maybe even a player character or two, start, just dropping. So they retreat and try and figure out what the flying fuck happened. Now, this is when Joshua uses divination. Now, divination wasn't originally on the wizard spell list, but in the UA class variants, it was added to the wizard spell list. It is, once again, a 4th level spell, so you can't actually, so it isn't applicable to spell mastery or signature spell. However, so he uses divination to learn that someone in the camp had, had taken something that they shouldn't have. So, and he once again uses either straight up divination, or he uses locate person, or perhaps locate object to narrow it down to the, low level rogue Aiken. And then he does a dirty trick and casts suggestion on him to make him confess. And then, of course, they, execute him and burn all of his stuff because, that's just the way he runs his games. He seems to be a fan of encouraging PvP. But, so, we, move on. He ends up failing heavily on an insight check and, accidentally promising to let a group of people that they thought, that they were, supposed to murderhobo the hell out of, live, but, they get a bunch of slaves, so... either way, we move on to his last magical feats, and this is where I break my one rule for these videos. So, in fighting a coalition of these, Canaanite armies, because they figured, hey, we get, if we go up against these Israelites one-on-one, we get our asses handed to us, so let's all band together. He casts Ice Storm, which isn't against my, my one rule. And technically, I could have broken my second rule with the Jericho thing by saying he casts Earthquake, but Earthquake is an 8th level spell that is exclusive to Druids, so I like to keep things within class. That being said, let's, move on. He attacks, he casts Ice Storm and kills large swaths of the army with it. Once again, it's a 4th level spell. And it does what it says on the tin. It makes this, makes a hail storm that does a ton of damage and, can be maintained as long as you maintain concentration. But the day starts waning on, and he keeps casting Ice Storm because it does manage to wipe out most of the army, more than what the rest of the players and NPCs have actually managed to kill. But the day is waning on, and it is starting to get dark. So, Joshua, it is looking like it is beginning to approach twilight. So, Joshua casts Wish, and this is where I break my rule. My main rule in doing these videos is I do not want to use, if I can possibly avoid it, I do not want to use Wish as an explanation. Because essentially Wish is you cast any spell in the spell list, or basically you say it and it happens. Now, There is a spell on the wizard spell list, also 9th level spell, which is the highest level spells you have in the game, called Time Stop. However, time stops for everyone, time stops for everyone except you, and if you do any attacks, or it basically gives you a few extra turns. But if you affect the environment in any way, or if you make any attacks, the spell ends, which doesn't help. But Wish is, you say it and it happens. So Wish creates a time stop-like effect and causes the daylight to extend and, his forces to finish massacring the army and the King Skull hide in a cave. Of course, he tracks them down, locate person, divination, scrying, arcane eye, what have you. He's a 20th level wizard. He's got means. And, they take him out of the cave and execute him, because this is the murderhobo campaign. And it's the rest of the campaign doesn't have any big flashy effects. It's literally just, they go to this city and they raze it to the ground, but they are allowed to keep X and X stuff. They go to this city, they raze it to the ground, but they have to destroy everything. They go to this city ad nauseum, and then the next few pages after that are everyone dividing the loot. Now, and once again, so this is why, it's very much obvious that Joshua is some sort of a Gish, because, yes, there are high-level spells being cast, but, there is a lot of melee fighting going on, and in the Wandering Through the Desert campaign, he isn't shown as casting many spells. Some could argue that means he's more of an Eldritch Knight, but once again, Eldritch Knights don't get access to the high-level spells, being only third casters. So that's essentially why I went with the Blade Stinger, because that is the fightiest a wizard can get, and all the spells mentioned are on the wizard spell list, because the wizard gets the most expansive spell list of all the casters. But anyways, that about does it for this campaign arc and character build. Feel free to like, share, subscribe, comment below on what you thought about this build. And, follow me on Twitter. It's where I do most of my engagement, socially speaking. And I do have a Patreon, where at the Divine Dungeon Delver level, I will be posting a suggested build guide for Joshua and further character builds in this series, for that tier, as well as some homebrewed spells and magic items taken directly from the campaign source, along with my suggestions for making them actually playable and balanced for a game. But with all that shilling out of the way, and with all the rest being said, I just need all of you to remember that indoctrination is a hell of a drug. He came dancing across the water with his galleons and guns, looking for the new world and a palace in the sun. He came dancing across the water, Cortez, Cortez, what a killer.